You don't want your bum flying off the bench, and you don't want to be sending your bum to Mars before any of us get there. A workout video today, which is quite an unusual one based on recent content, but we're actually looking at LeanBeefPatty and one of her upper body workouts where she's actually going over something like the bench press, which is something I rarely actually discuss. So we're gonna get straight into it and we're gonna do just that. So I've binned off all the warm up and all that stuff, because I don't think you really need to see it. Warm me up's just warm me up. What we're actually gonna do is talk about the primary movements today, give some tips and tricks, and basically tell you how you could maybe do the same movements, but perhaps slightly actually better. The big thing we're gonna note here on the bench press is the arch. You'll see how she's initiating this press position with this arch in the back. No, that is not bad for your back. All the people in the comment section, oh, that's really bad for your back. No, it's not. Prove it. Show me how that's bad for your back. But what we're trying to do with that is essentially, from a powerlifting perspective anyway, is try and reduce range of motion slightly. So what we're trying to do is obviously bring the chest up so the bar has less distance to travel, therefore you might be able to lift a bit more. You'll notice how she's tucking her elbows a bit more, a bit of a closer grip, something I would typically favour, and you'll see how the elbows and wrists are stacking pretty vertically here. So obviously what we want is the wrist to be kind of on top of the elbow, so the forearm angle is relatively a vertical, good pressing position to be in. But one thing I'm going to note here, that bum, you see it, I saw it, you saw it. Look, wait for it, you're going to see it again, it's going to happen again now. Watch this, bum's there, boom. Oh, and there's gap. I can see the daylight through the bottom. That's a bit of a no-go. When you're looking at like actually powerlifting, is that when your bum lifts off the bench, you're going to get red lights for that, which means the lift is likely not going to count. We want to keep, depending on the federation, but usually 3 points of contact on the bench: head, upper back, so like shoulder blades, and bum. When the bum is flying off, a couple of things to consider. Maybe technically there's a hindrance there, or perhaps you're actually lifting too much weight and it's kind of outside your means. There are things we can implement to help reduce the likelihood of the bum coming off, and we're going to talk about them just now. And one of those things is essentially foot positioning. So what we want to do when kind of looking at effective leg drive is, in most cases, we want the knee to be lower than the hip. As it is, this implies you're probably in a good position to get some decent amount of leg drive, and leg drive is essentially driving power through the feet and kind of transferring that up to the bar, essentially. But when the feet are quite forward, oftentimes people do find their bum lifty off. So it might be better if you could try and maybe drag your feet back a bit, which may potentially reduce how much drive you're initially getting. There seems to be maybe a problem of too much drive here where the bum is going on holiday. I believe she said this was meant to be an RP7, which implies there should be about 3 left in the tank. We're going to see very shortly that I think the RPE is off, and there weren't in fact 3 left in the tank. I'd actually arguably say it was an RPE 10, depending on her ability to grind. Actually, I say depending on her ability to grind, I mean based on the technical breakdown, you would say that is an RPE 10. That actually is fair. Technically the bum is still on, there is a contact point there, but I think it's probably going to come flying off in a moment, and then we would call this an RPE 10. There you go, bum is flying off. I could build a house in there. Again, that was a grinder, which implies probably none left in the tank. Not a bad thing, I'm just saying there's a few technical points to address that may, if she were to compete, be quite relevant. Or even if she weren't to compete, are probably good habits to get into. You don't want your bum flying off the bench, and you don't want to be sending your bum to Mars before any of us get there. So we've done a lengthened position pec movement, and now we're actually going to go into a shortened position pec movement, being the pec fly. By shortened position, I mean the majority of tension is going to be here when the hands are together and the muscle is fully shortened. With flies, I would treat it like a press. Genuinely, it sounds silly, I treat it like a press. Firstly, technically, there is some technical breakdown occurring here, and you'll see when her hands meet, look how much of a bend there is in the arms here. If we're looking at your humerus and how close the 2 humerus bones are, when your arms are bent, they're not going to be very close together, which means the pecs aren't going to be particularly shortened. What you want to do is straighten the arms, thus bring the humerus more across the body, thus shorten the pecs further, because again, the primary function of the pecs is to bring that upper arm across the body. If I'm there with bent arms, there's quite a lot of gap. What we want to try and do is almost push our biceps together, and in doing so, you're shortening the pecs more effectively. And that's actually partly why I say treat it like a press. It's because whether you are pressing with bent arms like so, or flying with straight arms, where the humerus is going is not changing. If you were to move my forearm and hand completely from the equation, from the elbow, when I bend, my humerus isn't moving. When I fly, my humerus isn't moving. So going through a fly motion with a straight arm, all that's really going to do is potentially limit how much weight you can use, and also put a lot of pressure on the biceps that doesn't need to be on there. Bend the arms on the way back to an extent, straighten as you come forward. Again, treat it somewhat like a press. It will still shorten the pecs effectively. You're going to lift more weight, and it's going to be less pressure on the biceps. Laughing, which is also actually why I'm not a big fan of the dumbbell fly, because again, if you look at dumbbell fly versus dumbbell press, what's the difference? They're both lengthened position movements, because again, there's going to be no tension on the top due to gravity in the free weights, and you're going through the same range of motion, but with the fly, you're just drastically limiting how how much weight you can use, thus drastically limiting the progressive overload ceiling. It kind of doesn't make a lot of sense. That's why I would always do a fly variation on a machine or a cable. So the lat pull down is one of those things where I don't need to say a lot about it. I speak about it often, but lat pull down, if I would say I could only choose one back movement, it's going to be the pull down. Because not only are you working the upper back effectively through this first half of the range of motion until about 90 degrees here, once you get past 90 degrees and you start adducting the upper arm to the body, which means essentially this upper arm is getting closer to the body, the lats are going to get heavily involved as well. What I would try and do if you can is probably go through a greater range of motion. The way up, fine, absolutely fantastic. She actually, there, see, she's stopping around the chin, and although I kind of support that towards the end when you're fatigued, obviously getting some like partial reps in, love it, but try and get as many to the chest as possible before then maybe doing a few that a bit shy of the chest, or at least close to the chest. If you don't have the mobility for it like I don't, just get as close to as you can. Tricep pushdowns are a bit of a staple. If you're going to do a pushdown variation, it's my preference to use a rope personally, because then if you use a rope, you can flare the elbows a bit more comfortably, which will then also help better line up the long head of the tricep with its origin in the scapula, because we want that slight little flare there. Also allows you to keep the elbows a bit more either in line with the body or maybe even slightly behind the body to further shorten the old triceps, but it really is preference. I think the thing with triceps is that you have to remember tri meaning three heads. Lateral head being outside there, long head being that inside big beefy one, and the medial head being underneath. The thing to note is the key focus point here is just going to be straightening the arms. That's what these triceps are largely going to do. They're going to extend the elbow, straighten the arms. If you straighten the arms in front of you like so, and keep those arms straight, really contracting the tricep, and now bring your arm down by your side and maybe slightly behind your body. Notice how the tension changes. Notice how the sensation changes, and it feels like you get more of a pinch when you're down by your side. Again, kind of favoring why I would use a rope, because again, you're potentially shortening the muscle a bit further, which might be a better time for you. Is it going to make or break anything? Absolutely not. It's just something to maybe give you that extra 1%. Lateral raises, another staple. The thing here is you can see her traps are getting heavily involved here. The trap's always going to get involved to some extent, but she is raising quite far out to the side. You want to kind of reduce trap involvement rather than raising directly out to the side. We look at 40 degrees or so in front of you, so the scapular plane. Try to straighten those arms as much as you can. Again, that will help reduce how much the traps are working here. Also, we could shorten the muscle a bit further. So we're stopping about there. Go a bit higher. Honestly, a few inches higher. Make sure the arm is parallel with the ground, kind of at 90 degrees at the armpit or so. Probably a bit of a better time, a bit more range of motion, a bit more bang for your buck. Is that ever a bad time? I'm probably going to say no. But as a whole, movement section was bang on, like genuinely, like really good movements. Bench press, lengthen position pec, shorter position pec through the fly. We've got a pull down, which is going to be upper back and lats. Tricep push down, love it. And also some side raises as well, banging. Maybe throw in another back movement if you wanted to, maybe even throw in a bicep movement if you wanted to as well. The 5 movements you've chosen are all 5 movements I actually support. Again, maybe slight variations of such, so like I said, a rope push down instead of a bar. That's just preference, it's not going to kill anyone. But yeah, just a few technical points that you can maybe take away from this video and maybe implement into your own training to potentially actually enhance your training and take you that little bit further. Like always, if you're ever interested in learning a bit more or wanting a bit more guidance, then link down below in the description, you'll find obviously the link to apply to work with myself, Ryder and Beth on a one-to-one coaching basis. You'll always find the link to download one of the TFNL workout guides, which are essentially workout fitness resources with loads of information about nutrition, training, all sorts, including many months of programming for you to follow within them. And you'll also find the link to the Train Heroic group coaching, a subscription service where you pay less than your Netflix subscription to get a program created by me. You could talk to the community who are also doing the program in there, ask me questions, throw some bits in there you want me to look at, and together we can kind of work towards your goals at a slightly more distant basis rather than with one-to-one coaching. It's a lot more personal, and then obviously you have direct contact with whoever your coach may be. But yeah, just options if anyone cares, but if you don't, then just ignore everything I've said and dislike the video. Thank you for tolerating me. Thank you for tolerating my waffle about the bench press. Is one thing I do quite fancy is the bench press, and thank you for tolerating the video.